Okay.
Okay, one of them is our fertility advantage that scholars have been writing about. They call it the religious shall inherit the earth thesis. And our fertility advantage is about 30% over secularists. And this is happening in conservative Christian homes where they're having children and secularists aren't. And we're also have studies that find that 80 to 90% of those kids retain their faith into adulthood and have comparable fertility advantages. And
Wonderful.
so, what they believe by 2030, believe it or not, the Christian church, the conservative Christian people of God, are going to actually start moving into the majority in many parts of the country. And they're saying the culture wars may tip decisively to our side in a matter of just a decade. So we have some wonderful things to look forward to, even in the midst of some very sober realities right now.
Let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, the founder of our feast, and that's the Backup Solar Bank. In the midst of our whole emergency situation that we found ourselves in, one of the best things we can invest in for our protection when the lights go out is what's called a solar power bank, okay? It's a backup power bank that's powered by the sun. It allows you to charge up to 2 devices at once, and you'll never have to waste money on batteries again. Now, limited supply lasts, and this is the very last chance to get yours at a 30% discount before they sell out, so don't wait. Click on the link below right now and give you and your family the gift of power anywhere in the world. Click on the link below or visit backupsolarbank.com. That's backupsolarbank.com. You'll be glad that you did.
You just recently wrote an article about the Stockdale Principle. What is that?
Yeah, it's a fascinating principle, actually, that business executives have been writing about in terms of what differentiates great companies from mediocre or good companies. It comes from Admiral James Stockdale, who many people might remember was Ross Perot's running mate back in 1992, really more or less the first populist shot back in 92, got garnered 20% of the vote, sort of stick it to the political class, as it were. But what a lot of people don't know is that Admiral Stockdale was actually the highest ranking naval officer, who was a POW in Vietnam. And he and his men were tortured ongoingly. They were put into all kinds of horrible situations. And his men said that what got them through such a horrible situation is what they're calling this Stockdale Principle. And it's almost like it's a paradox. At one level, you can never ever give up hope that you're going to prevail through this. But at another level, you've got to confront directly the brutal facts of your reality. You can't candy coat them or anything like that. So it's the perfect blend of optimism and realism. And again, I think of in many respects the Apostle Paul, particularly in the book of Romans, where he talks about things like, our present sufferings are nothing compared to the glory that we will experience, or that we are already experiencing in the resurrection of Christ. And I think the Stockdale Principle is very powerful for us today in the midst of what's an obvious election fraud. We have to have absolute confidence we are going to prevail through this, and yet we're going to have to deal directly with the challenges that are facing us.
So you're not saying the prevailing means Trump wins, but that justice wins in the end.
In the end, exactly. Now, I do believe that President Trump certainly can win, and I put that in my article, absolutely. And I think that should be our confidence right now, particularly the way his lawyers, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, were talking over the weekend about releasing the kraken of evidence and the like. But nevertheless, even if that were not to happen, this is ultimately not about Trump. Exactly. This is about hungering and thirsting for righteousness. This is about thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We want to see kingdom realities that are already secured in Christ. We want to see that manifest as much as possible in our world today in order to prepare time and space for its future transfiguration when Christ returns. So that hope for us should be absolutely unshakable, while we at the same time deal quite soberly and realistically with the challenges in front of us.
All right, let me deal with the sober part just for a moment. And this is somewhat of a summarization of something I read over the weekend. America is now, for the first time in a long time, having to really defend its faith. I mean, I'm talking the faith community. We've never really been pressured to defend our faith like we are now witnessing, to the point where the government seems to be hostile to us in some ways, even to shutting us down during the pandemic. And I could go on with a list of things.
Sure.
And some were saying that, well, this could be the reason God has allowed this turn in America, is that finally he is calling the ledger about us allowing the diluting of our gospel message, the killing of babies, and not standing for righteousness, that somehow we have become the culture Sunday morning inside a building. Those are stretches. I understand that. But is that reality or is that just bad thinking?
Yeah, of course, we'll have to see what's going on here in terms of how the result. I mean, the election is not over yet, so we're gonna have to see what's on at the end of the day. We're say January 20th, right?
Right.
When the last punch is thrown. I forget who that was. Vander Holyfield or something. It's not over till the last punch is thrown.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon has been quick with that one of late, but. Regardless, absolutely. I think, Perry, you and I talked about this the last time I was on the show on how the faith has been privatized. And what struck me is when you said, we've just become kind of Sunday morning, recreational activities. What we have to understand is, historically speaking, the Romans did not kill Christians because of their recreational activities. The Romans were killing Christians because they were declaring an alternative empire, an alternative kingdom, an alternative Caesar, as it were. They were proclaiming a fundamentally different public order, a fundamentally different civic order. The Greek word ekklesia, a lot of people don't know, actually refers to the adult citizen males of a polis, a city-state, that governed the affairs of the polis. So the ecclesia wasn't so much a religious term as much as it was actually a political term. It referred to New Jerusalems, as it were, manifesting all throughout the Mediterranean and through the gospel message all throughout, eventually through the world. We've been suckered into this notion over the last several decades that the church doesn't belong in the public square. It belongs in the private sphere of life. The church building doesn't belong across from the castle, or it doesn't belong on the town green in the New England Commonwealth. It belongs next to Pizza Hut and dry cleaners along Route 40. And what that has done is it has robbed the gospel message of its objective truth, because truth is public, it's not private. Truth is real, it's not recreational. And so we can't expect to proclaim truth when we have consigned ourselves and have accepted this sort of reassignment of the church and of the gospel into just recreational norms. Some go to yoga on Sunday, some go to First Methodist on Sunday. It can't be that way. And again, I look around the world and you see, for example, the way Russia had its faith trampled on for 70 years. Some of the most atheistic regime the world has ever seen, that fell on Christmas Day, 1991. God has a sense of humor. And since then, the Russian Orthodox Church has emerged to a prominence we haven't seen since the days of the czars. They do not see themselves as private and personal. They see themselves as absolutely essential to a flourishing vision of post-Soviet Russia. And I think we've got to have to do something comparable here in the church in America.
Gosh, that was brilliant. Because all you got to do is watch some of these documentaries of these wonderful cathedrals throughout Europe and ask yourself, the whole town surrounded them. Now, the modern people would say, well, that was a piece of history back then. But the whole towns were surrounded by the church. You go to some of the most remote places, and the first thing they build is a church. So I don't know, will we ever regain our position in this country when we allow ourselves to buy the lie, separation of church and state? Everything that we believe in as a tenet of faith has been politicized in an attempt to drive us out of it, out of the argument. And now we are restricted to 25 people on Sunday morning because of COVID, and we're allowing the government and its mandates and its interpretation of truth to rule us. I don't know. Are we on a verge of pushback or rollover?
Let's bring that Stockdale Principle back, Joe. I do think there's some fantastic news. So what you just stated is absolutely true. That's going on. But then there's some undercurrents that are happening as well. Some really good news of undercurrents.
Got about a minute. Go for it. Okay.
Okay. One of them is our fertility advantage that scholars have been writing about. They call it the religious shall inherit the earth thesis. And our fertility advantage is about 30% over secularists. And this is happening in conservative Christian homes where they're having children and secularists aren't. And we're also have studies that find that 80 to 90% of those kids retain their faith into adulthood and have comparable fertility advantages.
Wonderful.
And so what they believe by 2030, believe it or not, the Christian church, the conservative Christian people of God, are going to actually start moving into the majority in many parts of the country. And they're saying the culture wars may tip decisively to our side in a matter of just a decade. So we have some wonderful things to look forward to, even in the midst of some very sober realities right now.
Let's just push the pause button and pick this back up. You're wonderful. Let me say to our viewers, check out Dr. Turley's website. That's turleytalks.com. You can check out his podcast, turleytalks.com. Thank you, Steve. God bless you, pal. Keep up the good work.
You too, Perry. God bless.